back. The author of Managing the Gift of Your ADD, ADHD Child. We have Dr. Kevin Ross Emery with us. You stay right there. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery joins us now. He is the author of Managing the Gift, Your ADHD Child. We're going to be talking about, among other things, medical misdiagnosis when it comes to ADD. I found that very, very interesting, Dr. Kevin, how there are so many misdiagnoses with ADD. Because many times a child in school who is slower than the rest, shall we use that word, a little slower in catching up, sometimes is diagnosed with ADD. Am I correct on that? Was I reading you correctly?
Well, there's a couple of different things. Right now there's about 5.4 million children diagnosed with it. And the current estimate is about 20% of those, about 1 million of them, are misdiagnosed.
Now that's a parameter of severe to mild.
That's the whole
gambit.
The
Okay, go ahead.
whole gambit.
Okay.
And what happens is that one of the telltale areas is like in kindergarten. If you have a 5-year-old that maybe is 4 turning 5 and just making it in, and he's in a class with, or she's in a class with 5 to 6-year-olds, the youngest ones in the class are more likely to get diagnosed with ADHD. And part of it is, it's simply that they're just a little less mature.
Okay.
They're just a little, they're not
so
quite
they don't have ADHD at all.
They may not have it at all.
Diagnosis.
Yes.
They're just slightly immature.
They're just slightly immature. Okay. And one of the other things is that, there's a lot of misinformation. We get partial studies that are released. In fact, not too long ago, there was a study that was done through Harvard. And we got bits and pieces of that information. That study was being used in Australia, and they threw it out because they found out that Harvard was completely subsidized by one of the drug companies that produce the drugs for ADHD.
Ritalin, whatever
When I was in like 3rd grade, I had to read Charlotte's Web for a book report, and reading at that time made me nauseous. And so they just said I didn't like to read, and I didn't know how to explain to someone, when I read, I get nauseous. Is that a form of ADHD?
Not really. I mean, I wouldn't look at that. There may have been some things going on, between your visual input and your brain, and it may have been something that could have been affected by
physical
diet.
manifestation of that.
Of something, diet, environment, other things going on.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, what age typically should we wait until a specific age or an age range to correctly diagnose this? You said early on misdiagnosis, but is there an age where we can really make a definitive on that more than another time?
Well, there's a few things out there that I question, should we be diagnosing this label at all?
Oh, okay.
Okay, because what we see is 2 or 3 different things. One is that one of the areas they talk about being impacted is the executive function area of the brain. And so they are not as in control, they are not as manageable in the classroom. And in my first book, Managing the Gift, Alternative Approaches to Attention Deficit Disorder, I said we should have called this CIS, not ADD, which is Cultural Inconvenience Syndrome. We medicate them so that they behave better in the classroom. Yet studies are continuing to come out that say that in a 6 to 8 year time period, that they do no better than their non-medicated counterparts, that the executive function will catch up on its own if we allow it to, so the medication is not necessary. Yet in a 3-year time period, those that are medicated grow an inch less, because that's one of the side effects, than their counterparts that are being medicated.
So am I hearing that they grow out of many of the symptoms as a child or a person gets older?
Well, yeah, and we want to look at it, and when we say the symptomology here, one of the things I want to make clear is that these children are acting in a way that often is being exacerbated by diet.
Oh, sugars and dyes, I've heard.
Okay. Also, it could be exacerbated by parenting. And it is definitely being exacerbated by the condition of public education and what's going on. We're taking highly bright, highly creative children, and we're sticking them in a classroom. We're not giving them enough physical activity. We're loading them up with sugars. Then we're making them sit there and be bored.
Right.
And then they're starting to act out. They either daydream, they roll their eyes, they go here, they go there. And one of the things we want to make sure that we really look at here is all of the things that exacerbate this thing we call ADHD. I mean, I refer to ADHD as part of the evolutionary process.
You call it a gift.
Yeah, it is a gift, and it's here to broaden the bandwidth of humanity. We are looking that it started coming in the 1850s, and these were the architects of the 20th century. Alexander Graham Bell, Einstein, Edison. These people, if we put them on today's standard, would all have been labeled and medicated.
And then they would have lost their gift or their brilliance. They would have been medicated and subdued to fit into a normal, quote-unquote normal, or the grid of what, you know, public society does, and they would have just been dulled. Yeah. And they would not have.
I disagree with the medication, yes, but I do agree that we have to have some structure and standard when we're speaking of young children.
Well, we need to have some structure and standard, but, you know, one of the things, I compare it to this. You know, there are some people out there now that if your child isn't growing fast enough to be with their peers, they'll actually recommend a medication to make them grow faster. Would
that's ludicrous.
Okay. Well, why is not the same true in the brain?
Right.
Because their brain is growing differently. They're not less able. If you want to know how smart a child is, don't listen to the answers they give. Look at the questions they ask. And these children ask brilliant questions.
So what I'm hearing you say is if you put those children in an environment that supports them and encourages their brain growth the way it needs to grow, that's the success, not medicating them or keeping them stuck with regular kids, if you will.
Well, and we look at, if we want to look at getting them on the correct diet, having consistency in parenting, and then look at an education system that still only teaches basically for one learning style. Okay? And so we want to look at how these children learn. One of the things in my new book is I talk about painting your child's portrait. How many parents can sit down and say to a teacher, this is how my child connects to information, this is how they learn, this is how they need to be presented, these are the things that help, you know? And does a teacher, on the other hand, because there's no black hats here.
No, no.
I'm not looking for
There's
any.
enough to go around.
There's enough around. There's a little gray everywhere.
Yes. Managing the Gift of Your ADHD Child, Dr. Kevin Ross Emery. Where can we find it, sir?
You can find it on Amazon.com. You can find it on BNN.com. You may find it in your local bookstore. I'm not sure exactly where it is and where it's not, but it's out there.
Dr. Kevin, thank you. Great information.
That's
great having you.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful books for parents.
Yes.